The judges smiled, ready for a quiet piano song. They had no idea what he was about to unleash. The stage lights were bright, but the room felt calm. Rows of seats stretched into the dark. Faces waited. Some excited, some bored, some already judging. The judges sat behind their table, relaxed. They had seen many acts before. Good ones, bad ones, forgettable ones. The music stopped. A man walked onto the stage. He did not rush. His steps were steady, not slow, not fast. He wore simple clothes. No shine, no bold colors, nothing that asked for attention. The audience clapped politely. Smiled on se small. Quiet. He looked around the room, then down at the floor, like he was making sure he was really there. The host asked a short question. What would he do? He pointed toward the piano. A black piano waited at the center of the stage. Some people nodded. Others leaned back. A piano act. Nice. Safe. Familiar. The man walked toward it. The sound of his shoes echoed softly. Each step sounded louder than it should have. He sat on the bench, adjusted it slightly, placed his hands on his knees. For a moment he did nothing. The judges watched. One of them smiled, already comfortable. Another picked up a pen. The man took a breath. Then another. His fingers lifted. The first note was gentle, soft, clean. The room settled. More notes followed. Simple at first. Smooth. The kind of music that feels like morning light through a window. People nodded along. Someone whispered, "That's nice." The judges relaxed, even more. This was what they expected. A calm piano piece. Something pleasant. Something easy to understand. But the man's face did not change. He did not smile. He did not look proud. His eyes stayed fixed on the keys. The music continued. Still soft, still controlled. But something was different. His shoulders were tense. His jaw tight. The notes grew deeper, not louder. Deeper. The piano sounded full. Heavy in a quiet way. The man's hands moved with care, but also with pressure. Like he was holding something back. The audience leaned in without noticing. The judges stopped writing. One of them tilted their head. The music felt emotional now. Not sad. Not happy. Schuss. Full. It filled the space between people. It made the room feel smaller. Closer. The man's breathing changed. It matched the rhythm. Slow. Then a little faster. The piano bench creaked as he shifted his weight. A few sharp notes appeared. Quick. Unexpected. Gone as fast as they came. Someone in the crowd frowned. Another person sat up straighter. The music was no longer background sound. It asked for attention. The man's hands pressed harder now. His fingers moved faster across the keys. Still clean. Still controlled. But there was tension in every movement. Like the piano was not enough. Like the sound could not carry everything he wanted to say. The judges exchanged quick looks. This was still piano, but it felt like something else was coming. The man's foot tapped lightly on the floor. Once. Then again. The beat underneath the melody grew stronger. The music started to build. Higher notes climbed. Lower notes answered. It felt like two voices speaking at once. The man's shoulders rose and fell. His back straightened. The calm image began to crack. A judge leaned forward. Another stopped smiling. The audience went quiet. No coughing. No whispers. Just listening. The man's hands slowed. The music softened again. So soft it felt like it might stop. A pause hung in the air. The kind that makes people hold their breath. Then the melody returned. Stronger. More intense. His fingers struck the keys with purpose. Not anger, not joy. Release. The piano shook slightly. The lights above reflected off the black surface. Sweat appeared on his forehead. One drop rolled down his temple. He did not wipe it away. He kept playing. The music now felt like a storm held inside a small space. Powerful, contained. The man's body moved with the sound. Small movements at first, a shoulder turning, a knee shifting. The bench creaked again. The judges noticed. The audience noticed. The music grew sharper, faster. Then suddenly it stopped. The final note echoed once. 10 silence. The man stayed still. His hands hovered above the keys. The room froze. No one clapped. No one spoke. The judges waited. The audience waited. The man's chest rose and fell. Slow. Heavy. He lowered his hands. Not back to his knees, to the edge of the bench. He stood up. A few gasps filled the room. This was not how piano acts usually ended. He stepped away from the bench. The piano sat behind him, quiet now. The man closed his eyes. His head tilted back slightly. His arms hung by his sides. For a moment, it looked like the performance was over. Then a sound filled the stage. Not from the piano. A beat. Low, deep, strong. The man's eyes opened. His fingers curled slowly. His foot moved. Once. The audience leaned forward. The judge's eyes widened. The man shifted his weight. His shoulders rolled back. His body responded to the beat like it had been waiting. The calm pianist was gone, but the dance had not yet begun. He stood in the center of the stage. Still. Silent. Ready. The beat grew louder, and the room held its breath. For years, I lived a life split in two. By day, I was Julian, the pianist. My world was black and white keys, the weight of classical tradition on my shoulders, the pursuit of perfection in every note. My fingers knew Chopin, and Liszt like they knew the back of my own hand. In concert halls, under the soft glow of stage lights, I found a home, but it was only half of my home. When the applause faded and the hall emptied, the other half of me would start to stir. This other person didn't live in the rigid structure of a sonata. He lived in the free, untamed world of movement. He was a dancer. This was my secret, a secret I guarded more closely than anything else. To my family, my teachers, my peers, I was the dedicated musician, the heir to a legacy of classical artistry. The thought of telling them that my body yearned to leap and spin, that my soul found as much solace in the rhythm of a beat as it did in a complex chord progression. It was unthinkable. What would they say? They'd call it a distraction, a frivolous pursuit. They wouldn't understand that for me. Music wasn't just something to be played. It was something to be felt, to be lived, to be expressed with every fiber of my being. So, I danced in secret, late at night in empty studios, or sometimes just in my own living room with the furniture pushed against the walls. I'd put on headphones, letting the music flood my senses, and I would just move. It was raw, it was messy, and it was the most honest thing I had. While my fingers were trained to be precise and controlled, my body learned to be free and expressive. It was a strange dichotomy, living these two separate lives. Julian the pianist was all about control, discipline, and perfection. But the dancer, he was all about freedom, passion, and release. The constant hiding started to take its toll. I felt like I was wearing a mask, performing a role even when I wasn't on stage. The pressure to maintain this perfect image of a classical pianist was immense. At the same time, the urge to dance, to let that part of me breathe, grew stronger every day. I was becoming a stranger to myself, trapped between the man I was supposed to be and the man I truly was. The joy I once found in music began to feel like a cage, its beautiful bars gilded with expectation and tradition. I was suffocating. One day, I was practicing for a major upcoming recital. It was a piece by Rachmaninoff, full of thunderous chords and delicate, heartbreaking melodies. I played it over and over, my fingers flying across the keys, but my heart wasn't in it. It was technically perfect, but emotionally empty. Frustrated, I stood up from the piano bench and started to move. Without thinking, I let the music guide me. My arms swept through the air, mirroring the soaring melody. My feet stamped the ground, matching the powerful bass notes. I wasn't just playing the music anymore. I was becoming the music. In that moment, something clicked. It was a revelation, as clear and bright as a C major chord. Why was I keeping these two worlds apart? Why couldn't the pianist and the dancer be the same person? They weren't two separate identities fighting for control. They were two halves of the same whole. The music I played with my hands was the same music that moved my body. The emotion I poured into the keys was the same passion that fueled my dance. They belonged together. They were both me. The idea was terrifying, but also exhilarating. To combine them, to perform not just as a pianist, but as a complete artist. It would mean tearing down the walls I had so carefully built, revealing my most vulnerable self to the world. It was a huge risk. I could be ridiculed, dismissed, told that I was disgracing the sanctity of classical music. The fear was real, but the thought of continuing to live a divided life was even more terrifying. Primera de todo, Italiano. I had to be whole. The night of the recital arrived. The night of the recital arrived. The air was thick with anticipation. Backstage, my heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I could hear the murmur of the crowd, the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. For a second, I almost backed out. I could just go out there, play the piano like I always did, and no one would ever know. It would be safe, but I knew I couldn't. I couldn't go back to living in that cage. I walked onto the stage. The spotlight found me, and a hush fell over the audience. I sat at the grand piano, its polished surface reflecting the lights like a dark, still lake. I took a deep breath, placed my fingers on the keys, and began to play. The opening notes of the Rachmaninoff piece filled the hall, rich and melancholic. I played the first section just as I always would, letting the familiar melody flow from my fingertips. I could feel the audience settle in, comfortable in the familiar ritual of a piano recital. Then came the moment. The music began to swell, building towards a powerful crescendo. Instead of remaining seated, I stood up. A soft gasp rippled through the audience. I continued to play, my left hand carrying the powerful chord progression while my right hand left the keys. I moved away from the piano, letting my body respond to the music my own hands were creating. My movements were slow at first, tentative, mirroring the hesitant melody. I was testing the waters, sharing my secret with 1,000 strangers. As the music grew more passionate, so did my movements. I wasn't just a pianist playing a piece. I was a storyteller telling a tale of conflict, of longing, of a desperate search for freedom. My dance became more expansive, more daring. I leaped, I spun, I fell to my knees, pouring all the emotion I had kept locked away for so long onto the stage. The piano wasn't just an instrument anymore, it was my partner. We were in a duet, a conversation between sound and motion. I would rush back to the keys to play a frantic, complex passage, then pull away again to interpret it with my body. I could feel the shift in the room. The initial shock and confusion from the audience melted away, replaced by a rapt attention. They were leaning forward in their seats, their eyes wide. They weren't just listening to the music, they were seeing it. They were feeling it with me. In that shared space, I felt a connection I had never experienced before. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was completely, utterly exposed. And in that vulnerability, I found an incredible strength. The final notes of the piece were quiet, almost like a whisper. I ended not at the piano bench, but in the center of the stage, my body slowly coming to rest as the last chord faded into silence. For a long moment, There was absolute silence. It was the most profound silence I had ever heard. It wasn't empty. It was full of emotion, of understanding, of something shared and deeply felt. Then one person started to clap, then another, and another, until the entire hall erupted in a wave of applause that washed over me. It was thunderous, overwhelming. People were on their feet. I looked out at the sea of faces, and I saw not judgment or confusion, but tears, smiles, and awe. They didn't just see a pianist, and they didn't just see a dancer. They saw me, all of me. Walking off that stage, I wasn't Julian the pianist anymore. I was just Julian, an artist who had finally found his voice, not just in his fingers, but in his entire being. That night, I didn't just perform a piece of music. I performed my truth, and in doing so, I found the one thing I had been searching for all along. Freedom. The freedom to be myself, whole and complete. My two worlds had finally collided, and the result wasn't a catastrophe. It was a masterpiece. Thank you so much for watching and for letting me share this part of my story with you. It's a reminder that we all have different parts of ourselves, and the most beautiful art comes when we allow them to exist together. If you enjoyed this, please consider liking the video and subscribing for more. I'll see you in the next one.